Okay, so this video is about the true origins of St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so St. Patrick was not a saint at all. This is the Catholic Church once again co-opting a Christian and taking it for their own. They did it with St. Valentine, and they're doing it with St. Patrick. So St. Patrick's Day happens on March 17th, which is 3 days from now, and spring happens on March 21st, which is 4 days before after St. Patrick's Day, and so that means St. Patrick's Day actually lands closer to the spring equinox than Easter or Passover does. I mean, at least for this year. So St. Patrick, so-called, he wasn't a Catholic saint. He was actually against the Catholic Church. But like I said, like Lupercalia, Saturnalia, Passover, Egyptian pagan gods and goddesses imagery, rituals, and symbols, the Catholic Church has co-opted Patrick as one of their own. So Patrick, who had died 1507, 1539, or 1540 years ago today, depending on which unreliable source you want to believe, has been adorned with centuries of lies, mythology, and blarney. Patrick was born in Britain, probably in Wales, around 385 AD, even though Patrick the Englishman is celebrated as the main icon for the Irish. Patrick may have been born in either Wales or Scotland or in Italy, since his father was a Roman official. But Patrick definitely was not born in Ireland, so he's not even an Irishman. Patrick's autobiographical confession and his letter to Coroticus, an indignant letter to a slave-taken marauder named Coroticus, are the only two historical documents that we have about the non-Saint Patrick. So when Patrick was 16 years old, seafaring raiders captured him, carried him to Ireland, sold him into slavery. The Christian Patrick spent 6 lonely years herding sheep as a slave, and according to him, he prayed 100 times a day. In a dream, God had told Patrick to escape. He eventually returned home, where he had another vision in which the Irish people begged him to return and minister to them. And they said, "We ask thee, boy, come walk among us once more," he recalls in the confession. He studied for the priesthood in France, and then he made his way back to Ireland. Now, it's the priesthood for the Protestants, for the Catholics, it's in dispute. So then eventually Patrick goes back to Ireland, and he tells his former master that he better convert to Christianity or else, right? And then he didn't convert to Christianity, so Patrick set his former master on fire, right? So he liberated himself. He was able to escape, came back and said, "You better be a Christian now." And his former master wouldn't do it, so Patrick lit his ass on fire. Patrick then spent his last 30 years in pagan Druid Ireland, baptizing pagans and Druids and the peoples of Ireland, ordaining priests, finding churches and monasteries. And he must have had really powerful persuasive powers, because Ireland was fully converted into Christianity within 200 years of his arrival, and was the only country in Europe to Christianize peacefully, or so the story goes. Patrick's Christian conversion ended slavery, human sacrifice, and most intertribal warfare in Ireland. And so, that's what the propaganda, that's how they describe the pagan Druids, as being these barbarians. Either Patrick's persuasive powers convinced Ireland peacefully to become Christian, or maybe violence is what did it. So the reason that Ireland has no snakes, since that's a mythology about Patrick, he banished all the snakes, right, from the island, which I think the Pied Piper did the same thing, right? So, again, they're borrowing other legends and stories and adopting it for their own. But the reason why that Ireland, we know, had no snakes during the time of Patrick is because that reptiles and amphibians have never, or at least have not yet, repopulated Ireland since after the last ice age. So since the ice age, okay, when was the last ice age? Let's check this out real fast, okay? The last ice age that had happened in the world, at least in Ireland, let's see, ice age in Google. The last ice age that had happened in this world, it says it was a glacial age. This is Wikipedia. I rely on Wikipedia for a lot of my information. An ice age, more precisely a glacial age, is a period of long-term reduction in the temperature of the Earth's surface and atmosphere. So, let's see, major ice ages. There's been 5 major ice ages in Earth's past: the Huronian, Cryogenian, Andean, Saharan, Karoo Ice Age, and the Quaternary Glaciation. Outside these ages, the Earth seems to have been ice-free even in high latitudes. Okay, so let's see, they're talking about 2.4 billion years ago. They're also talking about, let's see, glacial periods, 260 million years ago, 850 million years ago. So it seems like the Huronian seems to be the last one, with 2.4 billion years ago. Okay, so there's 3 of them. It said the last one. I don't want to go through and waste everybody's time to find out when the last one is. It's probably the Quaternary or the Huronian, right? Because the Huronian is it's 2.4 billion years ago. So there hasn't been snakes in Ireland for 2.4 billion years. In fact, it's such a big number they use MYA, which, 300 million years. 2.MA, maybe 2 million years ago. So many millions of years there has not been any snakes in Ireland for many millions of years, right? Okay, so the same is true of Iceland. There's a quote here. Boswell states it was Dr. Johnson's party piece to recite the whole the 72nd chapter of Niels Horreboe's The Natural History of Iceland Concerning Snakes, which in its English translation consists of one sentence: no snakes of any kind are to be met with throughout the entire Ireland. So Patrick, he never banished any snakes, since Ireland never had any. The snakes were actually symbolic. The snakes that Patrick had drove out of Ireland were the Druidic priests and the pagans. So the Druidic priests had serpents that were tattooed on their forearms, and the Druids and the native Irish pagans, since snake is a metaphor for the serpent of paganism, the snakes had represented the native peoples of Ireland, the Druids, the pagans, and a pagan is any non-Catholic, right? So Patrick actually genocided the native Irish, the logical, scientific, smart, autonomous Irish pagans and Druids who had populated Ireland before Patrick, came by and genocided everybody. So St. Patrick's Day is a celebration of genocide, right? So that's a great way to, to start a celebration for springtime, you assholes. Let's celebrate, get drunk and celebrate a genocide. That's also just like the Christian Thanksgiving and the Catholic Christopher Columbus Day. When we celebrate Patrick, it's like celebrating Stalin or Hitler, men who genocided, lots of people. Patrick genocided the native Irish people if they did not convert to Christianity. So he started the Irish Inquisition. Patrick is said to have had many mythical miracles. So not only was he able to banish all the snakes, Patrick, he had stood on this mountain. He called up all the reptiles, the snakes and dragons in Ireland, and he ordered them to jump over Eagle Mountain, right? So, this man, a man, right, not a supernatural god, but just a man, he had stood on a mountain at Eagle Mountain and told all the reptiles, snakes, and dragons, ordered them up the mountain, and then ordered them to jump off. Which they did. They immediately jumped off, and then, Ireland was free from reptiles, snakes, and dragons. Patrick then himself admitted, this is a remarkable admission, that he was able to rise 33 dead bodies up from the dead. 33 resurrections, right? So he was able to make 33 dead bodies alive again. 33. I think Jesus only did like 1 or 2, but Patrick, he's more remarkable than Jesus, apparently, when it comes to resurrecting the dead and bringing back the dead to life. So Patrick also brought back a horse and giant back to life. So even, he wasn't just bringing back people, but also horses, a giant. But unfortunately, the giant that he brought back to life was immediately put to death right after he was resurrected. So, the giant didn't have a very happy story. Sometimes Patrick's baptisms didn't go well. He murdered 2 princesses right after they were baptized. I think they tried to dig him up actually recently here. So, it's shrouded in mystery who Patrick is, but there are origins of, Patrick with his confessions and with that letter to Coroticus. Innumerable folk tales recounted how he faced down kings, he negotiated with God, and, as well, of course, tricked and slaughtered all of Ireland's reptiles. So, this is Patrick. This is the great Irish icon, and he's not even Irish. He's not a saint. He didn't know shit about the shamrock. So let's see. Some say Patrick's conversion of Ireland to Christianity saved all of Western civilization, since Ireland's monasteries were the ones copied and preserved the classical texts. So during the Dark Ages. So later on, Irish monks returned this knowledge back to Europe by establishing monasteries in England, Germany, France, Switzerland, and Italy. They were allowed, by doing this, they allowed the Western learning to survive the Dark Ages, and Western civilization was survived because of the Christian monasteries that Patrick had established in Ireland. Ireland survived as the rest of Europe crumbled and collapsed, and they were able to resurrect a lot of the classical texts, your Roman authors, right, and your Greeks. So the Irish have celebrated their so-called patron saint with a quiet religious holiday for centuries, perhaps more than 1,000 years. But it took the United States to turn St. Patrick's Day into a boozy spectacle. Irish immigrants first celebrated in Boylston in 1737 and first paraded in New York in 1762. And then, of course, there's the 1855 Know Nothing riots, right, where the white people burned 100 German and Irish people dead, or burned their houses and killed over 100 Irish and German Catholics who had immigrated into Louisville. The Wasp who did that. And you got to swat those wasps before they sting you. By the late 19th century, the St. Patrick's Day parade became a way for Irish Americans to flaunt their numerical and political might, and it retains this role today. The scarcity of facts about Patrick's life has made him a dress-up doll. Anyone can seem to create his own Patrick. Ireland's Catholics and Protestants long have feuded over him, have each built a Patrick in their own image. Ireland's Protestant minority, by contrast to the Catholics, it says that Patrick was not a bishop and he wasn't sent by Rome. In fact, they said that Patrick was anti-Roman Catholic, and he invented a distinctly Celtic church with its own homegrown symbols and practices. So the type of Christianity that Patrick had adopted was anti-Catholicism and pro, just kind of its own Irish Christianity. Evangelical Protestants claim him as one of their own. After all, he read his Bible, and his faith came to him in visions. Biblical inspiration and personal revelation are Protestant hallmarks. Patrick co-opted the Druid symbols in order to undermine the rival religion, fusing nature and magic with Christian practice. The Irish placed a sun at the center of their cross. St. Patrick's breastplate, Patrick's famous prayer, which he certainly did not write, invokes the power of the sun, the moon, the rocks, and the wind, as well as God. And this is what is called Erin Go Hoo-Ha. So it's called Erin Go Hoo-Ha. Patrick didn't give a shit about shamrocks or how the shamrock represented the unfathomable Holy Trinity. That was 18th century fabrication. So, on March 17, this is our spring celebration, right? Spring has finally arrived. We raise a glass of warm green beer to Patrick, the non-Irishman, the non-saint, who didn't rid Ireland of snakes, who didn't compare the Trinity to the shamrock, who wasn't Catholic, who started a Christian Inquisition, an Irish Inquisition against and genocide of the native Irish peoples, pagans, and Druids. And this is the shit that y'all celebrate for spring. I mean, my God, it's springtime. This is a good celebration. This is when people get Twitter-pated, right? This is when love happens, and it's the breaking of the ice, going out from cold, dreary, dark winter and start coming out to the sunshine, right? The bright sun is coming out, and we're going to see a new year. All right, so that's sort of what St. Patrick's Day is, such a big celebration. It's the coming of spring, getting drunk and all that other stuff and celebrating everything Irish. You know, it all comes from this holiday. And of course, holiday is holy days, right? Because it comes from the Catholic Church. But really, it should be called holidays because it's all based on a lie and total fabrication. Not surprising since Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christopher Columbus Day, they're all based on lies as well.